Hi everyone, my name is Richard. I'm a JD student at the Melbourne Law School working in the Melbourne Law School Tax Clinic, or the MS Tax Clinic for short. The MS Tax Clinic is a supportive, inclusive student-run clinic where you can receive free tax assistance from Melbourne Law School students either online or on campus at the Melbourne Law School. We are part of the National Tax Clinic program, a government-funded initiative to help people who may not be able to afford professional advice and representation with their tax affairs. Our students are supervised by a dedicated clinic supervisor and experienced tax practitioners. To apply for assistance, please see the application form on the MS Tax Clinic website. Today, I will give you a brief outline of PSI for tax purposes in Australia on behalf of the MS Tax Clinic. The information provided in this video is intended to be educational in nature and should not serve as legal advice. Please consult a legal or tax advisor if you have specific questions. In this presentation, I will discuss what are the PSI rules, whether the PSI rules apply, and thirdly, further resources. PSI is income that's mainly a reward for an individual's personal effort or skills. There are special tax rules around PSI to prevent people from shifting or splitting of income with other individuals or entities to pay less tax. Earning PSI may affect the types of deductions you can claim as well. In general, when you earn PSI, you are treated as though you are in the same position as an employee, which means basically you may claim deductions against the PSI received if the expenses are incurred in producing the income and you would be entitled to the deduction. This is the flow chart that goes around whether you are in the PSI regime or not. I will explain the steps and what the words actually mean. You can use this to determine whether you are in the PSI regime, which means you are in the same position as an employee, or you are out of the PSI regime, which means you are running a bona fide business. Income is classified as PSI when more than 50% of the income you've received is a reward for your personal effort or skills, rather than being generated by use of assets, the sale of goods, or by a business structure. When working out if your income is PSI, you need to look at income you've received from each contract separately. For example, Sandy is an IT consultant who provides system analysis services through her company SP Consulting. And SP Consulting enters into a contract with Rachel's Bumper Corporation to provide Sandy's consultancy services. The contract and invoice for this work both indicate that more than 50% of the payment for these consultancy services are a reward for Sandy's labor, and the income is mainly a reward for Sandy's personal effort or skill and therefore is PSI. The result test is used to test the nature of the agreement to perform the work. To pass the result test, you need to meet all three of the following conditions for at least 75% of your PSI you earn. You must be paid to produce a specific result. You are required to provide equipment or tools, and you are required to fix mistakes at your own cost. Generally, you are paid to produce a specific result when payment is made after contractual conditions have been fulfilled, or being paid an amount for an agreed number of completed items or activities. To meet the required to fix mistakes at your own cost condition, you must be liable for the cost of fixing any defects in your work. You don't need to actually perform the work that fixes the mistake so long as you are liable. If you meet all three conditions of the result test, the PSI rules don't apply. If not, continue to other tests. And as you can see the example in this slide, and Drew satisfies the result test because he is contracted to produce a result, and he brings his own tools to do the work, and he is liable for the defects. However, Dave Corporation doesn't satisfy the result test since it doesn't meet the third condition of the results test. You need to work out how much of the PSI being tested come from each of your clients. If 80 or more of the PSI comes from one particular client, the PSI rules apply. If less than 80% of the PSI comes from any one particular client, continue to the remaining tests. And the first subtest is unrelated client test. To pass the unrelated client test in an income year, you must meet both of the following conditions. First, you must have received PSI from 2 or more unrelated clients, and there must be a direct connection between the offer to the public and you being engaged to perform the work. If you operate through a company partnership or trust and you've more than one individual generating PSI, you will need to work out whether you pass the unrelated clients test for each individual separately. If you pass this test, the PSI rules don't apply. If not, you need to continue to the remaining 2 tests. The second subtest is employment test. To pass the employment test, your business must employ or contract others to help and perform work that generates your PSI, and you must meet one of the following conditions. The first condition is at least 20% of the principal work is performed by others. And the second condition is one or more employees are employed for at least 6 months of the income years. If you pass this test, the PSI rules don't apply. If not, you need to continue to the remaining test. And the third subtest is business premises test. You will pass the business premises test if at all times in the income year you maintained and used the business premises, which meets all the following conditions in this slide. And if you pass this test, the PSI rules don't apply. If not, which means you don't pass any of the tests, the PSI rules apply. However, if you believe your circumstances were unusual, you can apply for PSB determination. And that's an example for the unrelated client test. Kevin is able to self-assess whether he meets the unrelated client test. A Limited doesn't qualify as an unrelated client because it's an associate of Kevin's, but B and C are 2 unrelated clients obtained as a direct result of Kevin's making offers to the public. Therefore, Kevin still meets the requirements of the unrelated clients test. And to conclude, if you are earning PSI, then you need to report this as PSI in your tax return, even if you are a personal service business and the PSI rules don't apply to you. If the PSI rules apply, you are treated as though you are in the same position as an employee. However, the PSI rules will not affect the contractual relationship between business and clients or whether considered to be running a business. If you would like further information or assistance regarding PSI, you can book an appointment with the MLS Tax Clinic or learn more about it on the ATO's website or consult a qualified accountant or legal advisor. Thank you.